Hey, architecture firm owners and emerging leaders. Get ready for unparalleled insight into the development of a world-class architecture firm and a worldwide organization driving the digital transformation of the design and construction industry. With Build Smart, the podcast that's changing how our profession operates. We share the incredible stories behind innovation in the building industry with my friend and co-host, Patrick McLeamy, FAIA, former CEO of the international architecture firm, HOK.
You know, Yamasaki's office or firm lasted during his lifetime. And when he passed away, I think that was the end of the Yamasaki office. Helmut did not want that. He wanted a firm that would live out and grow beyond the founders.
In Season 1, discover the untold stories behind HOK's meteoric rise, from 150 employees in St. Louis to a powerhouse with over 1,900 staff members and 27 offices worldwide.
You know, they weren't as polite as the Kojima people. That was just boom. And anytime you have a creditor, whether it's Kojima or the bank, that wants their money, unless you can raise money someplace else, you are out of business.
Bankrupt. And hold on tight for Season 2, where Patrick takes us on a new adventure as chairman of Building Smart International, shaping the future of digital transformation in the design, construction, and operation of built assets.
Ian Howell, Ken Harold, and I, Ken was my technical representative from HOK. The three of us took a tour of Europe of 5 cities in 5 days. Very busy time.
Simply follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Smart now and uncover lessons that will transform you and your architecture firm. Hey, architecture firm owners and emerging leaders. Get ready for unparalleled insight into the development of a world-class architecture firm and a worldwide organization driving the digital transformation of the design and construction industry. With Build Smart, the podcast that's changing how our profession operates. We share the incredible stories behind innovation in the building industry with my friend and co-host, Patrick McLeamy, FAIA, former CEO of the international architecture firm, HOK.
You know, Yamasaki's office or firm lasted during his lifetime. And when he passed away, I think that was the end of the Yamasaki office. Helmut did not want that. He wanted a firm that would live out and grow beyond the founders.
In Season 1, discover the untold stories behind HOK's meteoric rise, from 150 employees in St. Louis to a powerhouse with over 1,900 staff members and 27 offices worldwide.
You know, they weren't as polite as the Kojima people. That was just boom. And anytime you have a creditor, whether it's Kojima or the bank, that wants their money, unless you can raise money someplace else, you are out of business.
Bankrupt. And hold on tight for Season 2, where Patrick takes us on a new adventure as chairman of Building Smart International, shaping the future of digital transformation in the design, construction, and operation of built assets.
Ian Howell, Ken Harold, and I, Ken was my technical representative from HOK. The three of us took a tour of Europe of 5 cities in 5 days. Very busy time.
Simply follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Smart now and uncover lessons that will transform you and your architecture firm. Download our free course, Profit for Small Firm Architects, at entrearchitect.com/free course. This is Entre Architect Podcast, and you're listening to episode 162. Welcome back to the Entre Architect Podcast. My name is Mark R. LePage, and this is the podcast dedicated to a successful life as a small firm architect. Whether you have plans to someday start your own firm, whether you're in the process of launching a startup, or you might be an experienced small firm architect just trying to make a difference, this podcast is for you. My goal is to inspire you to build a better business so that you may pursue your purpose with passion and live the life of your dreams. This week, I invited my friend Mike Riscica of YoungArchitect.com back to the show to continue where we left off the last time he was here at Entree Architect Podcast. In this episode, we dive deep into what it means to be a young architect and what it takes to become a licensed architect. This week at Entree Architect Podcast, the pain, the passion, and the process of becoming a young architect. This episode of Entree Architect Podcast is sponsored by NCARB, helping architects reach their career goals. Explore your options today at ncarb.org, ncarb.org. And TrueStyle, the leader in high-end architectural interior doors. Learn more at entrearchitect.com/TrueStyle. That's TRUSTILE. And FreshBooks, the easiest way to send invoices, manage expenses, and track your time. Learn more at freshbooks.com/architect. Michael Riscica, welcome back to the Entree Architect Podcast.
Thanks, Mark. It's an honor to be back.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. I wanted to bring you back to give us an update on what's going on. I see you all over the internet. Lots of things going on. Young Architect is growing rapidly, so I wanted to bring you back here and share what's going on. Before that, I just wanted to remind everybody you're an architect based in Portland, Oregon. You're the founder of YoungArchitect.com, and you've been here before. Right after your big cycling trip across America, literally one side of the country to the other, I had you on. You talked about that. You talked about that big journey from one side of the United States to the other. You talk about getting licensed and passing the ARE and how to pass the ARE. And so that's anybody wants to listen to that episode. Also hear Mike's origin story. We're not going to go into that here. Go back to episode 132, and that'll tell you everything you need to know about who Mike Riscica is and where he's come from and how he got to where he is today. We'll have links to all of that on this episode. This is episode 162. So, Mike, young architect, booming.
Yeah,
things are growing. Yeah. Things are really, really hitting a big pace over there. So, just give us an update. What's going on over at Young Architect?
Oh, there's a lot of stuff going on. Been super busy lately. Actually, backing up a second, I listened to that episode we had, was it 132? Yep. And or before we met, I wanted to pick up where we left off on that last conversation. And oh my gosh, we chatted when I was in Colorado. I was in a little town, Walden, Colorado. And I was actually cycling across America. And after that, I just had, the whole trip was amazing. It was unbelievable. Once I got out of Colorado, I moved into Wyoming, Montana. I learned on that trip, and I never knew this before, that I just do really lousy at, up in high elevations. And so I was kind of like, struggling for a while. And then as soon as it was around Missoula, I dropped down to about 3,000 feet. I felt like I was Superman, and I finished pretty much the rest of the trip I don't know, it's like riding 100-mile days, feeling like it was a piece of cake. And but yeah, what an amazing experience. And it was a ton of fun to connect with you too in the middle of that whole thing. I literally, walked out of my tent into a cafe that had Wi-Fi, and we sat down and chatted. It was a lot of fun.
I forgot that it was in the middle of the journey. I had it in my mind that it had, but as soon as you started saying that, I remember that. And then you had a big part of it to go, and I think you were going to World Domination Summit too, right?
Yeah, right? I did that. That was a lot of fun. It was a great summer. It was just summer of 2016 was unbelievable. So, yeah. But back to Young Architect. I've been plugging along. I've been writing a lot. About 3 years ago, I started Young Architect right after I got my license, and I really wanted to start an architecture blog. I had been inspired from, seeing what you were doing, seeing what Bob Borson was doing, and many other people outside the architecture realm, but in some ways like serving their community. And so, the mission of Young Architects has always been helping students, ARE candidates, young architects, and other professionals be more successful. And so, I've always kind of used that as a guideline for all the content, all that I've created, all the blog posts. I recently started a podcast, which I'll talk more about. But lately, I've been talking a little bit more about kind of blatantly telling people what my mission is and what I believe. And, one of the things that I've always kind of, and you see this with a lot of the writing that I've done, is that I think that a lot of the young architects and students and people in the profession really need to be their own advocate. In my experience, I had, you go through architecture school and there's a camaraderie and a community of people moving along this, schedule of time. And then we graduate school. And in my opinion, I feel like a lot of students graduate and flounder until they become a licensed architect, where I feel like, the AIA does a fantastic job of creating community and other architecture organizations, CSI. But kind of that in-between stage between graduating school and, having your license, I wanted to address that part of the architect's development. And so I really started, blatantly writing blog posts for should I become licensed? Should I not become licensed? Looking for jobs. Hang on one second. Let me think for a second.
Yeah, I love the articles that you write because you're very honest. You're very open about your thoughts on specific subjects, and it's not always what people expect. That you'll write about whether architecture is even right for you. And you're talking to a community of people who've just gone through all of that schooling, and now you're considering whether you should even be licensed. And that's a very important conversation to have, because there are a lot of architects that should not be architects. And it's not necessarily that they're not qualified. It's just not what their purpose is on this planet. That I think we all have a purpose, and we may go through architecture school, but a licensed architect doesn't mean that's not necessarily the next step. You go through getting your education, and then what happens next, So.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I also really strongly believe that not everyone's on the same journey. I go crazy. I bang my head against the wall when I hear people say things like, it only takes 6 months to pass the architect's exam. You just need to make a schedule and sit down and do it. And it worked for me. And why can't everyone else do it that way? I don't know. Like, that wasn't my journey. I worked really freaking hard wrapping up my exams. And it's, everyone's got their own path, their own strengths and weaknesses. And I think there's room, the beautiful thing about architecture is there's such a huge, the topic of architecture, the profession, the business, there's such a huge place and jobs and opportunities for people with different strengths. Yeah. And so, being a licensed practicing architect, pulling permits, stamping buildings, that might not be your gift or passion or what you have to offer the world. That doesn't mean if you're passionate about BIM or renderings or model building or building envelopes, you can't be successful. And so I've always been trying to get away from this idea that, not everyone's on the same journey. Everyone has different strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, or even using your education to go solve other problems. I feel that once you've graduated architecture school, you're an architect. And I know there's a big controversy over that. There's lots of questions right now with NCARB and all that on what architects should be called. And that's a whole nother story. But my feeling is that once you've graduated, you can call yourself an architect, and that means that even if you leave the quote unquote traditional practice of architecture to go do something else, and you're still using the skills that you've learned as an architect to solve other problems and maybe in other industries, you're still an architect. You're trained as an architect. If this was 200 years ago, you would still be considered an architect. You may not be considered a master architect or a master builder, but you could be an apprentice architect or a journeyman architect.
Yep.
I believe that's the same thing today.
Yeah, I agree with you too. I think the word architect's been abused a lot. The IT industry calls themselves architects, and so I think I wrote in a blog post, like if some guy with a 2-year degree in IT can call himself an architect, then why shouldn't people with 5, 6, 7 years of education be able to? I think licensed architects should call themselves licensed architects, and everyone else can call themselves an architect if they want. I learned something recently too. Someone asked me, they said, why do you say licensed architect? Why don't you use the term registered architect? I don't think there's anything wrong with the term registered, but someone also recently reminded me that sex offenders are registered. And having an architecture license is kind of like anyone can register for anything. License is, you have the permission, you have special permission to do something. So that's why I always lean towards the term license over registered.
Yeah, I tend to do that too. And I never really thought about it, but that's typically what I say as well.
Yeah. One of the topics, I feel like I've gotten into a debate many times recently, and I feel like I'm the only one arguing this debate. But recently, I feel like I've debated back when I've heard other professionals in the profession say things like, I hate hiring recent graduates because they don't know anything. Or I recently was talking to someone, and she's this older architect who was telling me that she's kind of done hiring young architects because you train them and then you spend all this time and energy training them and then they leave and they go on. And so kind of the debate I've been arguing is that I think the architecture schools have a very important job in training our future architects, but I also think the profession has just as important job as training our future architects. And so let me elaborate. In my opinion, I truly believe that, architecture school is a place for future architects to go to learn how to design and problem solve. I think it creates a safe place for students to experiment and take risks and learn the fundamentals of design and learning how to express themselves and from theory and history and learning from the past. I really, truly believe that's the purpose of what architecture school is. Everyone always says, there's only 1 or 2 pro practice classes and students aren't learning how to, put together comprehensive code compliant construction drawings. And that should be emphasized a lot more. And it's there, and I agree. But I also argue that there's so much that needs to take place and there's so much development and growth that needs to happen in architecture school that now adding another layer of complexity of now you need to design code compliant buildings and have a complete understanding of how the profession of architecture works, I think is just way too much to layer on to what already needs to take place during architecture school. And so I've always been arguing that, it's really to learn about the basics and fundamentals of problem solving and design. That's the purpose of architecture school. I also believe that part 2 of architects' education kind of begins the minute they finish school. And, that first phase is done. And now it's time to learn about practicing architecture in the profession. Getting back to what I said earlier, I always need to advocate that I've always truly believed that the young architect's number one job is to advocate for their personal and career development. So I don't sound like another whiny millennial pointing a finger at the profession. But I also truly believe that the profession as a whole, in some ways, needs to really acknowledge their role in creating future architects and training them and taking the time to sit down. And it bothers me when I hear people say that, complaining that young architects leave them after they've been trained, because I feel like I didn't say it in that conversation to that other older woman architect, but we're architects. We need to grow. We need to evolve. And that's part of that's how I got in architecture. I always feel like there's more to learn. There's more new and interesting things for me to work on. And so, thank God I'm still not working at the same architecture firm I was at, 2 years after architecture school, because so much has happened and so many new experiences. And so I guess my advocating is for the rest of the profession to acknowledge that and realize,
I think the schools will agree with you. Because when you talk about that case, whether they should be learning how to put together full construction drawings or even business. My argument is that we should be learning more business. The schools will say that's not our job. And NCARB will also agree with you. That's their job is to create that process, the ARE or the AXP. That's or not the ARE, the IDP or the AXP. That's the intent of that. That's where you're supposed to learn those things during that process. And I think business, my world, that's where that ties in. Is that if architects build better businesses, they will have the money and the time to take on that responsibility of bringing in young architects, training them. Maybe they'll stay, maybe they won't. And we all have to acknowledge the fact that our society has changed. The way business is run today has changed. People don't take a job and stay there their entire lives. Everybody now moves. They work for somebody for a little while, and then they'll go work for somebody else for a little while, and they'll go work for somebody else for a little while. Lots of them are working for themselves as freelancers and learning what they need to do because of that. The internet allows all of these things to happen. We need, as a profession, to acknowledge that that society has changed. Technology will allow these things, and build better businesses so they have the time and the money to do those things. Because I think that's the argument. Is that I don't have time. I don't have the time or the money to bring somebody in, train them, and then just send them off into the profession. And if they build better businesses, if they're more profitable, they would be able to give back to the profession.
Yeah, absolutely. I like what you said too about, things are different. And what I love now about like the internet and communication is I feel like more now than ever in history is there's so much information and connection and social media, for people to, guide their own success, and everything's not local anymore. I'm in Oregon, you're in New York, we're friends. I feel like we chat all the time, but Mark, I think I've spent maybe 20 minutes with you in real life,
Yeah, right.
And so there's just so many opportunities. Another thing, and I want to say that you reminded me of is, and I don't want to sound like a brat or sound vindictive, but in my experience as kind of an intern coming up in the profession, I think people need to realize that when you let a younger intern person into your firm, to acknowledge that they're in some ways the future of the profession, and they kind of get to see the behind the scenes of how you run your business. I have had a couple of interactions with people that weren't so desirable, and then years down the road, when I was working for the local government, I find myself in a position of power and over their business. And it's really, you gotta, in some ways, I feel like treat these interns and people working for you as if they could be your future clients or customers, because I don't know. What goes around comes around, and I feel like the younger people are moving up to positions of power nowadays a lot earlier than they have in the past.
Yeah, and every generation has been in the position that the current generation is in, where they're not totally respected. They're sort of looked at as, I'm Generation X, and so Generation X had that same problem. They talked about us like there was something wrong with us, like we were a bunch of lazy. But that's every new generation is looked at that way, and I agree with you. I think that the profession and architects individually needs to take on the responsibility of helping train the future of our profession. But I would also say the opposite is also true. I think that young architects need to recognize that they are being educated and that they are apprentices. And I think if they embrace the idea that they are an apprentice, and it may take 10 years to the point where you start the journey of becoming an architect. You start architecture school, and you go through architecture school for 5 or 6 years, and then you go through a process of internship, and that might be another 3 years. And so that 5 to 3, that's 8 years. And then you get a job and you start working and you do other things in different professions. That's another 2 years, maybe 3 years, to the point where and it doesn't matter whether you have a license or not, to the point where you have enough knowledge to to be able to do all the things that an architect does, a master architect. If you look at it in terms of apprentice and masters, and I'm not saying we should go back to that terminology. I'm just sort of acknowledging or encouraging young architects to change their mindset that they're not going to jump into the profession and make $100,000 or have to run a project or be permitted to design a new building. Acknowledge the fact that you're there, and that's the role you should be playing right now. You should be absorbing as much information as you can and giving back everything that you have to whomever you're working with to get the knowledge you need to get to the point where then you can go to the next level. I think if you look at it in terms of a 10-year journey from beginning to end, it will help you, because it'll help you as a young architect accept that you'll not be constantly fighting and butting heads with yourself and with others. You'll get further along in the profession if you look at your role in those early years as learning as much as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. It takes I think it takes a lifetime. It doesn't happen overnight. What I love about this profession, and I've been bashing it a little bit too much, but what I love about the profession of architecture is that it's really, if you work really hard and you prove yourself and you do your time and you get people, you show your value, you prove your value, you're rewarded by compensation,
right,
projects. It's not this like you graduated this school, so we're going to pay you X amount of dollars. It's not. It's really about hustling, and that's the recurring theme that I've learned over and over again. It's the people who hustle, whether they're the best or the smartest or whatever. It's really about doing the work and taking action.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that has nothing to do with age. So if you're a young architect coming into the profession and you're hustling, you're going to advance much quicker, both in responsibility and compensation, than somebody who comes in and just expects it all to happen, and you're just rolling with it, and wherever it goes, it goes. Same thing with business owners. The entrepreneur architects that if you're out there expecting it to just happen, just design great architecture and you'll be a successful architect. That's not going to happen. You have to get out there, and you need to hustle, and you need to learn business and how it works, and be, learn how to get good at that.
It's way too competitive for you not to be hustling, for anyone not to be hustling, because someone else is hustling just as hard and trying to get ahead. And so,
Yeah.
But that's what I love about this profession. It's not for the, I like to work. And like I say, my friends who aren't architects look at how much time I spend working on this stuff and projects and how many hours I log and are like, what the hell, but I love doing it. It's what I want to be doing. If I wasn't like even when I had a full-time job, I was still writing Young Architect and doing projects and completely busy. I like staying completely busy. So,
yeah. And I, the fact that we're living in this era of technology and internet communication is so exciting because, youngarchitect.com, you can start it and you can express your opinion. A community can gather around that idea and those opinions. Entrepreneur Architect, we can, put a platform together, create a community, and it's really exciting to be able to live during this period and create things. And so, other architects could do that as well. Young architects can express themselves any way they want. Let's take a quick break here to say thank you to our platform sponsors here at Entre Architect: NCARB, True Style Doors, and FreshBooks. Do you know someone in your firm who's always dreamed of getting licensed but was unable to complete the experience requirement? Well, maybe that person's you. Now you can get back on track with NCARB's new AXP portfolio. With this option, seasoned professionals can complete the Architectural Experience Program, the AXP, formerly the IDP, they've switched things up a little bit, by submitting an online portfolio. And along with meeting your state's education and examination requirements, the portfolio will help you or your employee get one step closer to becoming an architect. Learn more about the AXP portfolio at ncarb.org/EntreArchitect. TrueStyle is passionate about providing us small firm architects with the inspiration and the tools to transform our designs with the most authentic and distinctive doors available. And now we can see TrueStyle doors and how they worked with the National Association of Home Builders and architect Phil Keane to create a show-stopping interior door package for the 2017 new American home. To download the case study or watch a video and learn how TrueStyle doors can help differentiate your next project, visit entrearchitect.com/TrueStyle. TrueStyle, driven by design. Visit entrearchitect.com/TrueStyle. So how do you get paid faster? Well, one more way is to use FreshBooks. FreshBooks is a full-function online accounting system built for us, small firm architects. We're small businesses. It includes invoices, expense management, time tracking, and so much more. It does everything I want it to do in order to get paid faster. I could send invoices efficiently on the same day. I could set up FreshBooks to automatically send reminders with the words and the timing that I want, and I can accept credit cards for payment. You should give it a try. When you're ready to give FreshBooks a try, go to freshbooks.com/architect and sign up for your free 30-day unrestricted trial and get ready for the simplest way to be more productive, more organized, and most importantly, get paid faster. freshbooks.com/architect. And don't forget to let them know that EntreArchitect sent you in the How Did You Hear About Us section. I wanted to just sort of go back to the fact that the blogs that you're writing, the blog posts that you're writing are really, really well done. And the newest thing that you're doing, you mentioned it a little bit before, is the podcast. The Young Architect podcast is live and rolling, and it's done really well. And so why don't we talk about that a little bit? What inspired you to sort of take that next step and start the podcast?
Yeah, it was, I had been kicking it around for a long time, and I actually resisted the idea. It's probably about a year ago. I was trying to grow the blog, take it to the next level. And I was considering doing a blogger program. I never ended up signing up for it. It was like a blogger mastermind. Let's figure out. It was like one of these master bloggers who had a lot of success was trying to help other people. And in the sales info, the sales page of their website, it said, if you've been blogging for more than a year and you really want to take things to the next level, I'm going to push you really hard to start a podcast. And that was kind of what planted the seed. And I never did that program. I never followed through with it. But I started thinking about what if I did a podcast? I resisted it for a really long time because I always felt listening to myself on recording, like I had come a long way and I'd gotten really comfortable as a writer, and expressing myself through writing. But the whole podcasting thing made me feel really uncomfortable. And so I kicked that idea around for a long time. And then I started to get more serious about it, kind of around it was actually probably around the end of the bike trip. I finished that bike trip and I pretty much didn't work all summer. I was riding a bike across America. But as soon as the bike trip was over, I hit the ground running and, started working my butt off. I pretty much worked overtime, crazy hours until I took a vacation in January. But and kind of through just kind of doing lots of writing and working on Young Architect and wanting to make it bigger and better, I just kept coming back to this podcast idea. And so I started the Young Architect podcast. And for one of the challenges I've always had too, backing up again, is I've been trying to take the focus off of me. I'm pretty passionate about this Young Architect mission, but rather than me, telling my story over and over again, and in some ways I'm kind of sick of telling it, I wanted to put focus on other people who are aligned with my mission of helping students, ARE candidates, and young architects be more successful. And so I started writing articles about people that are doing good stuff, doing inspiring projects. And I wrote a handful of those, but even then, in the process of writing those articles about, so I would have a conversation with someone, and I would then listen to that recording, and then just by doing that a couple of times, I said, you know what, I can't express the energy that's being conveyed in this conversation through the filter of my writing. And that just kind of drew the line. And I was like, I got to start this podcast. And so what I've been doing with the Young Architect podcast is I've been trying to get people's stories out of them. There's a lot of really inspiring people who I've met along the way who I just have really inspiring stories with how they discovered architecture, what happened to them in school, what their experience was in licensing and the profession, and kind of how did you get to where you're at today. And so I've been trying to extract those stories from as many different people from all different walks of life, and really hearing about people's experiences that kind of bring them to where they're at today. And I've always been trying to focus more. I'm not really a big star architect guy. I'm not really as interested in the people that already get a lot of publicity. And so I've been kind of finding more of the little guy that's just doing really good stuff that I think needs to be acknowledged, and having really great conversations with people.
Yeah, I've been listening. I've also been a guest. It hasn't gone live yet. I think it's scheduled sometime in April. Mm-hmm. But I love it. I think you're doing a great job. I love the casual conversation format and sort of sharing people's origin stories. I think it's a great concept, and I think it's inspiring.
Mm-hmm. It's been a lot of fun to do. I've had a lot of fun doing it. It's also been a great lesson in asking for help. I recorded about 15, 20 episodes before I started editing them. I mean, they all need to be edited. There's always like an awkward silence or someone coughs and so I started editing them myself, and I did about 45 minutes of the first one, and I said, I can't do this. Like, I'm not even good at doing this, and this isn't the best use of my time. And so I've ended up having to hire a bunch of freelancers to help me with get the editing done. I've hired someone to actually help me to listen to the whole podcast and put together a blog post kind of summarizing the whole conversation, everything that was discussed, with links and everything. And it's been a whole process. And so I've been working with a lot of freelancers and, getting people to help me. But it's been a great lesson in I can't do everything myself. And even though I'm kind of a micromanaging control freak, like I got to let it go and, ask for help. And it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree. I think putting together this podcast it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work in prepping. It's a lot of work in post-production and getting it all produced and out there on the internet, show notes, all the things that go along with it. I have a great producer, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. You're going to be listening to this.
Shout out.
I appreciate everything you do for Entree Architect. And she, I record these and I record the other intro and outros, and I send them to Sarah, and she makes them sound the way they sound. And so it's great to have help. And it is, I agree with you. It's very difficult to delegate. It's just sort of not part of my nature, and it's something that I agree. And I never really thought about it until you just said it, that delegating the podcast was sort of the first step for me to start delegating other things as well. And so I agree.
Yeah. And it even gets back to architects. If we look at these great architects and all these beautiful buildings they've done, Frank Lloyd Wright himself personally didn't draw every single line and do every single detail. I'm sure he reviewed it, but we need a team of people to help us get these things done. And
the most successful people in life are it's really a team that's made them successful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what else is going on over at Young Architect?
So I've been writing a whole lot, and I've been pushing on the podcast pretty hard. The podcast has actually been fueling a lot of the writing I've been doing lately, just getting inspired from all these conversations. But I've been also actively working on the ARE Bootcamp program. We touched upon it on our last show.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit. Remind people what the ARE Bootcamp is, and it's evolved a little bit. So talk about how it's changed.
Yeah, actually, let me give you a quick history of what it is, where it came from. I passed my exams. I started Young Architect. I I started getting a lot of really positive feedback on the blog post I wrote about the ARE, and I ended up writing a book, kind of taking that energy. I ended up writing a book called How to Pass the Architect Registration Exam, which is a little black book about how to use all this study material and get in the right mindset to get this thing done. It's not a resource guide. It's more of it's kind of a handbook for how to use all this study material and information and get it done. And so from that book, I started to have people reaching out to me saying, Mike, you got a lot of info and a lot of insight. I would like to hire you to coach me as I get started for the architect exam. And, one of the big points I make in my book is the problem with the architect exam is that, up to this point in your architect education, there's been a community of people all working on the same exact goal. And now you're on a self-guided studying process. And there are many, many people that are all working on the same goal as you of studying for these exams, but no one's talking to each other. We live in this world of communication where everyone's hyper communicating, but everyone's very lonely doing this by themselves. And so rather than coaching people one-on-one, which I was never really interested in, I came up with this idea back in 2015 that what if I brought a group of people together and we treated it like a design studio, and rather than everyone, working, rather than designing a project, everyone's studying for the exams, sharing insights, feeding off the energy of each other, and kind of got like, let's do it as a group. And so I did the first ARE boot camp back in September of 2015, and I was doing groups of 5 people back then. Now I do groups of 6, but I brought a small group of people together, and right away I knew like, this works. This is a formula like this. Everyone's so familiar with how the design studio works. So treating the exams this way seemed to make a lot of sense. And so really what the ARE Bootcamp is, it's kind of an extension of what my book is. It's not a class. I always need to emphasize it's not a class or a course. It's a program. If it was a class or a course, I would teach the stuff to you for 12 hours a week, and you sit and passively listen and take notes. As a program, you study on your own, I would say 8 to 15 hours a week. And my role is to guide or help you teach it to yourself. Having said that, I've done the program so many times. I know what the questions are and where people get stuck. And I do quite a bit of teaching myself. And, let's dive into A201 and general conditions and bidding. And I've learned a lot doing this program. And so I do a little bit of teaching, but it's really to guide people to get them started with making progress on the architecture registration exam. It's really for the people just beginning. I've had people reach out to me who are very far along wanting to do the program. And I say, I'm worried you're not, a lot of this stuff. But in my experience, and my personal experience, I spent a lot of time kind of figuring out what the next step is. How do I use all this information? There's too much information available, but knowing how to use it effectively is really a big part of the program.
So do you have multiple groups going on at one time, or do you do one group at a time?
Well, I do. One of the big lessons I learned, it was easier. I used to do I'll do one call on a Sunday night and another call on a Wednesday night. I don't do that anymore. It's easier for me to sit. And so now I do 3 groups back to back. Okay. I sit and talk about the architect exam for 3.5 hours on Sunday and Monday nights. And so I overlap. So I have each group has 6 people in it. Then there's the January boot camp, which has 3 groups, and that's on Sunday nights. And then I have the February boot camp, which is on 3 more groups on a Monday night, and they overlap about halfway through. So when one's halfway through, another one's beginning, and that's kind of how I do it. I stack it. But at this point, I've run 17 different groups, and I've worked with about 101 people.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Do you have any feedback on how many have passed the exam because of the boot camp?
Yeah, and I always need to say that the ARE boot camp's not a guarantee you're going to pass the test.
Yeah, right.
The success rate of the ARE boot camp is the same as what it is for the test, or whether you take it or not. As crazy as that sounds, in my experience, my personal experience, I showed up to take the SPD test, and there was nothing left for me to read. I was so well prepared. I went way above and beyond. I was nervous about that test anyways, but I went way above and beyond on what I needed to do to be prepared for it. And I had memorized all my questions. I knew the stuff inside and out. There wasn't any reason for me to not do well. But when I showed up to take the test, everything I studied wasn't there. I got some crazy version. There's 4 or 5 versions of each exam. And the questions are constantly moving. There's a lot of moving parts. And so, I failed that test, even though I shouldn't have. I knew the stuff inside and out. I ended up coming back 6 months later, and I didn't really do much more work. I was actually less prepared the second time I took that test than I was the first time. And so I ended up, the second time the test was so easy, it was a walk in the park. I thought, like, am I missing something? This is like these questions, I know this stuff inside and out. And so it's always a moving target. I hate to say it, there's been 3 or 4 people that have taken my program who've gone above and beyond what they need to do, and showed up on test day, and they just didn't pass.
Yeah.
But it's the intention of this program is we do everything that we can to be as best prepared for the hardest version of the test. And so I always say the success rate of the test is the same as the exam. But having said that, the success rate of the people that take this program and get to the finish line, and that's kind of how I see it. Like, in some ways, that's more important to me. I want to see you finish all of these tests, and I'm going to hold your hand for 10 weeks. We're going to go through this process. I'm going to teach you everything I know about preparing for these tests, and ideally, I want to see you get to the very end. You might fail a test or 2 along the way. It's part of the process. Everyone fails. There's nothing wrong with failing a test, but I really want to see people get to the end. And so I'm starting to see the first batch of people that have taken my program come back and say, I'm done. I've made it. I'm a licensed architect now. And that's been really rewarding.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the best thing about it, because when I took the exam, it was just at the very beginning of the new format with computers. Before that, everybody showed up at the same day, at the same time, in the big giant coliseums, and they took the exam all together in one shot, one day, every year. Mm-hmm. And so when they did that, it may have been, if you look at it, it may have been easier because you only had one day to do it. So if you decided that you wanted to take the exams, you studied that year. And you prepared for it because you knew that day was my only day or I'm going to have to wait another year. As soon as they switched over to being able to take the exam anytime, that's when it got hard to take the exam because your life gets in the way. Now if you could take it anytime you want, then, when do you take it? And that actually, I fell into that problem, and it took me, a bunch of years before I said, okay, I'm going to become a licensed architect and take the exam. What I love about the boot camp is that, okay, you can focus on saying, okay, I'm going to take the exam. I'm going to commit to a program like this boot camp and get it done, And so it sort of helps you focus and guide the target of becoming a licensed architect. So Mike, if somebody wanted to join this boot camp, what's included in it? What do you get with it?
So it's a 10-week program, and I have a calendar, kind of outlining the whole thing. We meet weekly on a dedicated meeting. And so, me and 6 people get on a video chat. I use GoToMeeting, and we kind of check in. How'd the week go? I kind of ask the same questions every week. How'd the week go? What'd you study? What were the challenges? Any questions on the content? And we talk about that. And, someone might show up and say, I was reading about bidding and something didn't make sense. And I was reading this thing in this page, and, we talk about it. Or someone else in the group chimes in and said, hey, I had that same exact question and I solved it because then I read this chapter. And in some ways, we kind of had like this group dialogue, checking in with each person, making sure like no one's stuck or gets left behind. And so the meetings are kind of the core of what this program is, but there's a lot more pieces to it. There's a lot of moving parts. I have a syllabus, and, both you and I, Mark, know pretty damn well that nothing happens in the architecture world without a deadline. And that's the biggest challenge with these exams is you got a 5-year deadline. and that's a great reason to put it off forever. And so in this boot camp, I have a syllabus that pretty much tells everyone what they need to be reading each week. And that syllabus kind of gets us through the first half of the program. We do a big survey, kind of this broad survey of what's on the test. What are all the study materials available? And we practice showing up and the consistency of finding the time to do this, because I think that's a big part of the challenge too is, everyone's working 40 hours a week. How are you going to add 8 to 15 hours of extra work of sitting and reading and studying and doing this into your already busy life? People have kids and commitments and other things going on. So getting that ironed out in the first half of the program is really the number one goal. And so while we're kind of figuring out how you're going to add this into your busy life, we're doing a broad survey of what's on the test. The second half of the program, then we really drill down. We choose a test date about halfway through, and then we spend the remaining 5 weeks, mastering all the information. I have a bunch of resources. I got a Dropbox that we share. I got a website with stuff all over the web. There's no illegal file sharing in my Dropbox, and everyone's got to purchase their own study material. But there's still a lot of really good YouTube videos and PDFs, and the AIA's created tremendous resources for for studying for the exam. And so we use all those. I say the Mike Riscica resource. I'm a resource for the boot camp. I would rather, there's so much interactivity going on. I would rather for someone call me on the phone and ask me a question and let's chat it out for 5 or 10 minutes than people go on a goose chase looking for an answer and spend 2 hours, and really kind of like using me as a resource to get you up to speed, to answer your questions, to keep you moving along, is a big part of the program. We also track our time, similarly to how people track their time in the office, how much energy, we measure that to see how much, people are working on it each week. I say we study every day. I give people a to-do list of stuff. It's not just reading. There's stuff that's got to get printed. There's blog posts, there's videos, anything that's not reading. I give you a million things that you could be working on. And so say you have a really busy day at the office, or there's something going on at night, you don't have time to study. Go to my list. There's a million things on there that you could do in 15, 20 minutes. But we try to consistently study every single day to kind of help build momentum over the course of 10 weeks. I've created a lot of videos, and I create the videos as a way to maximize our meeting times together. It's really like to have less of me talking and more of everyone else in the program. If I got something to teach or share, I just record a video and let people watch it on their own time rather than on our meeting time. I got a private Facebook group that we chat in. I got that has practice questions being dripped out. I use a social media software that spits out a practice question that I wrote every day. And then I have an assistant that comes in and gives the official answers on twice a week. And so people reply as they're using Facebook. They're answering practice questions. I push practice questions really hard, Mark, because I feel like people can understand this information really well. But unless you've practiced giving it back and giving back the answers, that's where a lot of people get tripped up. And even especially, not to pick on anyone, but a group of people that always get tripped up with practice questions are people that speak English as a second language. I think sometimes get confused or they get confused within the way the questions are worded sometimes. Right. And so I just push practice questions really hard. We write our own practice questions from the stuff that we study, and we share them with the other people in the boot camp, and then they study them. And then one of the things I've added recently to the boot camp, the boot camp's also been, I'm constantly trying new things and getting rid of what doesn't work and keeping what does. And one of the things I started doing recently is creating these meetups of people studying together. And so the way the meetup goes is I teach everyone how to run these, but everyone in the program's in charge of running 2 meetups. And basically you email everyone in the program and say, I'm meeting up at this time. If you're around, join me. And so if people are studying anyways during that time, why not jump on a video chat phone call and work on some practice questions or discuss what you've been studying this week. And so it's really kind of a way to kind of get people studying together and talking to each other and kind of working with each other as a group. And that's just been profoundly powerful. And so the meetup thing's really taken off. And and at this point, the more boot camps I'm running, like I think there were like 4 or 5 meetups this week, and they don't always work. We're across all time zones. The boot camp's pretty global. I even have people overseas sometimes, but not all meetups are going to work with your schedule, but some of them do. And so I always say, if you can make them, great, to kind of work together with other people.
Yeah, you weren't kidding when you said that the boot camp has evolved. It certainly has grown. It sounds like a very complete program. Is there a specific place that they should go? Should they just go to youngarchitect.com, or is there a specific place they should go to learn more?
If you go to youngarchitect.com, it's all over. It's hard to get far in that website without seeing something about the boot camp. But that'll take you all to it. Youngarchitect.com.
It's great to hear the update of everything you're doing. I think Young Architect and the blogs are going well. I've seen your writing all over the internet outside of Young Architect. It's been on Architizer and ArcDaily and other places. The podcast is great, and the boot camp sounds like it's booming. So it's great to hear the success that you're having, the success that you're helping with other people, you sharing your knowledge. It's really inspiring to hear your journey, to watch you grow. And I appreciate you for being here with me today.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mark. Thanks for acknowledging all the journey I've been on, because honestly, going through it, I feel like a lot of these things, with just starting Young Architect, the podcast, the boot camp, like a lot of the stuff I've been working on, it's always felt really shaky and clunky at the beginning, but just kind of staying true to what I believe and keep pushing through. And I feel like I've been in some ways more fine-tuning and getting better at what I'm already doing than trying to really add more to it. So
yeah, just small victories, just keep progressing, and it gets better and better and better. Okay, the Young Architect website is youngarchitect.com, and you're all over the internet on social media as Young Architects PDX. So that's ARCHITX PDX, as in Portland. So it's Young Architects PDX, or you could just search Mike Riscica, Young Architect, in any of those places. You'll find it: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And Mike, before I let you go, and I'm going to spring this on you. I didn't let you prep for this, but what is one thing that small firm architects can do today to build a better business for tomorrow?
Right off the top of my head, I'd say acknowledging it's not about you and helping others. In some ways, rather than looking at everyone as competition or wondering what you're going to get out of it, really trying to just be of service to you, to the profession, to your clients, to everyone to the people that work for you, to young architects, just being of service and not always looking at it from the point of view like, what am I going to get from this interaction or helping this person, but really just kind of trying to lift up the profession as a whole. I think when we do that, it really, and people acknowledge and can connect with that, it really has profound impacts. And I've kind of been able to see that firsthand from the work that I've been doing. So.
Yeah, you're a perfect example of that. Yeah. So Mike, thanks for taking the time to hang out with me today. I appreciate you sharing all of your knowledge. I love this conversation from the very beginning of talking about architects and what we should be called and how we should be presented, and young architects versus the profession. I love that conversation. It was really exciting to have that. And so I really appreciate you coming here and sharing your knowledge with the Entree Architect podcast.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mark. And I also want to thank you, Mark. You've been a really big inspiration to me. And I found you when I was studying for my exams, and I said, this guy's on a mission to help architects create better businesses, and it's really beautiful. And so keep doing what you're doing. I think you're doing an amazing job as well.
Thank you, Michael. I really I appreciate that sincerely, and that's why I do it. I do it because it's making a difference, and I see you doing the same thing. So. Keep it rolling, and I appreciate it. I'll see you on the internet.
Yeah, have a good one.
If you liked what we shared here today, complete show notes and a direct link to download this episode will be found at entrearchitect.com/episode 162. Share that link. Share it up. Share that link with somebody who you think might benefit from the conversation that Mike and I had today. Spread the word. I appreciate it. And don't forget to visit the website at entrearchitect.com/free course to download your free course. Have unlimited access to Profit for Small Firm Architects at entrearchitect.com/free course. My name is Mark Arlepage, and I am an entrepreneur architect, and I encourage you to go build a better business so you can be a better architect. Love, learn, and share what you know. Thanks for listening, and have an awesome week.
Imagine earning continuing education credits while doing exactly what you're doing right now. Well, you can. Gable Media has revolutionized the way you earn your continuing education credits with a groundbreaking approach. Forget running around town and scouring the internet for credit-worthy courses. Fulfill your CE requirements effortlessly by listening to engaging podcasts just like the one you're listening to now. Our podcasts are designed to educate, entertain, and inspire, all in a user-friendly environment. But wait, there's more. Architects, Gable Media is also approved as an AIA continuing education services provider. Upon completion, we handle everything, from reporting your hours directly to the AIA to storing your certificates in your personal Gable Media profile for your self-reporting needs. So follow the link in the show notes and start earning your credits in the most innovative and entertaining way possible with Gable Media.
Attention architects and creative minds, get ready to supercharge your brand with Build Your Brand, the podcast that's unlocking the secrets of branding success for creatives. Hey there, it's Mark Arlepage, founder of Entre Architect, and I'm inviting you to join my friend, architect marketing expert Jeff Eccles at Build Your Brand podcast, where he explores the captivating stories of the world's top brands and transforms their lessons into powerful moves for small firm architects and creatives like you. In Season 1, Jeff shares the thrilling tale of Southwest Airlines, where he dissects their journey to the summit and distills it into strategies tailor-made for you.
It's important to keep in mind that companies like Southwest compete in the real world, just like you, and face real-world challenges, just like you. You might be surprised at how similar those challenges are to the struggles that you grapple with on a day-to-day basis.
Don't miss out on your blueprint for success. Subscribe, tune in, and let's build your brand together.
You may have noticed that the very best brands in the world are also known for having somewhat unique corporate cultures. That's often the glue that holds everything together when they encounter those rough spots.
We don't do it because it inconveniences the passengers to whom we are primarily dedicated, the short haul, frequent flyer.
Follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Your Brand today. Remember, no matter the size, the journey's the same. Your brand's journey to the top starts here.